Hi, Sally. How are you today?
I'm so great. I'm really happy to be here
Yes, thank you
and
so much.
chat with your people. Yes, of course.
Yes, so let's start with introducing yourself and telling everybody who you are and what do you bring to
Sure.
this world?
Oh my gosh. What do you bring to this world? I love that question. Hello. Yes, my name is Sally Z. I go by Sally Z online because my actual last name is Zimney and nobody can really hear that. It sounds like Zimmy or Zimming or whatever. So at some point it just got shortened to Z and I love it. So we go with it. And I am a speaker and a speaker coach. So I empower entrepreneurs and change makers, leaders to help them step out front and speak their story in a way that moves audiences. So when I say out front, I really mean whether you're in front of a microphone doing a podcast, or you're in front of 10 people in a conference room, or you're in front of the TEDx stage, or you're in front of a conference full of people looking at you as you deliver a keynote. So it's the whole range, really helping people share their stories and their messages with more confidence and clarity and authenticity, which really is the key.
Yes. And why is it so important for us to use our voices and put ourselves out there?
I personally believe that when we can show up with authenticity, when we can, in a way, not do it like other people, but do it in a way that really feels like us, it can absolutely catapult you into authority. It can help you have a much greater impact. The difference between somebody who is just following the playbook of this is how I'm supposed to speak, this is how I'm supposed to present, this is how everybody else does it, and the person who feels really confident in their own skin, who is focused not on being perfect, but focused on really connecting with their audience, they're going to be able to show up and make good on this purpose, this thing that drives us out front in the first place. There's historical moments of when these words changed the way we all think and believe and behave. And I don't take it lightly. It's already an intimidating kind of world for people. So I tend to not overemphasize like you can change somebody's life. This can be life altering for people because there's enough pressure on
Yeah.
us. But I think it's true. I think we really can have and create big change when we can step out front and be ourselves.
And there's more of that connection when you hear somebody's voice than just reading what they wrote.
It's true. There's something really special about speaking words, and we feel that difference. So, Jillian, if you think about, you can write a blog post and post it, and people might share it, it might have an impact on people, but it really, the message becomes three-dimensional in a real way when you're hearing it in somebody's voice, when you're watching it live in their body, when you see somebody feel nervous as they're sharing something or get emotional. Like it lives in us differently and it affects our audience differently. So I'm super biased, but it's my favorite form of communication, of
Mine
course.
too, yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes, and I know it can be scary. I know people hear the word public speaking and they run the other way. So,
Yep.
what steps can we take to get comfortable with actually speaking in front of people?
Yeah. So let me tell you about just an experience that happened last week. I was doing a workshop for a company. I do a lot of workshops around really how to persuade your audience, really how to structure messages that help persuade people. And so I was working with a group of what they call leaders. So these are really young professionals who they see potential in, and they brought me in to do this workshop. And in the first few minutes, I always ask everybody, where are you on the spectrum of loving or hating public speaking? And even knowing they're in a workshop about public speaking and they're talking to somebody who loves it, there's always a handful of people who are just like, I hate it. It's me. I don't know. And I'm so grateful that they admit to it in the moment, because that's a brave thing to do given the context. And so they're last Wednesday, there I was, and I asked, and there was a handful of people, and this one man in the back, he was just like, hate it. I hate that we're doing this. I hate that I'm here. I'm sure you're a lovely person, but I would rather be anywhere else in the world right now. And I was like, all right, thank you for being here. And my goal is to help you just hate it a little bit less because you feel like the risk could be worth it. Because it's a risk for all of us. It really is. So we spend the morning together, and I'm really talking with them about lowering the bar for ourselves. Like, it does not have to be perfect. We do not have to show up all buttoned up. If we mess up, if we use filler words, if we lose our way for a moment and lose track of our content, it doesn't mean that you can't have an impactful message. And I would argue, actually, as I did on this in this workshop, that in some ways your imperfection makes you easier to connect with, because we tend to put speakers or people up front on this pedestal. They can do it, and they're a different kind of person. I can't do that. So I was like, maybe it's more accessible than you think, right? So I'm just inviting people into this. We talk about some different frameworks, and at the end of the workshop, we do what I call a 2-minute talk, and I intentionally make it 2 minutes. We only spend 5 minutes preparing it. We're just practicing some of these strategies. And one of the people who offered to share their 2 minutes to talk was my cynic, the guy in the back who was like, no way, not me, not me. And so I like, what changed your mind about this? Why did you decide to give this a go? And he said, I am scared of the risk, and this felt like a safe place for me to take a risk. Now, I feel so grateful that it felt like a safe place to take a risk. So really the question is, how can we create the scenario that feels safe enough for us to take some more risks? And one of the things that I'm constantly telling people is that everybody gets nervous. It feels risky for everybody when you're about to do something that matters, that you care about, that could potentially have an impact. And the fact that it's scary shouldn't keep you from taking the risk, because everybody feels scared. Some people are just better at pretending, or like turning their fear into excitement, which is ultimately what it ends up being for those of us who've been doing this a long time. We feel afraid, but we just shifted into excitement faster because we trust ourselves. So you really have to do it anyway. That's ultimately what I'm trying to say, Jillian, is, yep, you're scared. Yep, you're convinced that you can't do it. Yep, you think everybody else does it better than you. But the reality is, if you try, if you take the risk, if you put yourself out there, there are payoffs. It is worth it, even if you mess up, even if it doesn't go the way that you want it to go. And the only way to figure it out is to try, which is probably not what people want to hear, but that's the truth.
Yes, I know. I always say my first guest interview on a podcast was horrible. Like, I thought it was so bad. But once you get over that first time, you're like, oh, I did it. Okay, I survived, even though it didn't go so well.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Jillian, that's exactly it. Because once you do it, you're like, oh, I survived. I did it. There's evidence. I can point to evidence now that I actually can do it. And so the first time is the hardest, and just raising your hand and trying is the hardest. And it probably wasn't your best interview. Everybody has to have their first, and then they get through it.
Yes. And then you just keep getting better from there. The more you do it, easier it gets. Yep.
It's true. And everybody truly can do this. And I spent the first 15 years of my professional career speaking to teenagers, and that's a tough audience. They're gonna let me know if what I'm doing isn't great, or they don't believe me. Like, you really have to show up authentically, because their BS meter is pretty high, which is great. It was a great learning arena for me. And one of my coworkers who I was coaching was so good with kids and young people and teenagers, but he was not a polished presenter or speaker. He was a classroom teacher who we somehow convinced to come do these big speaking things for 150, 200 ninth graders. And he worked really hard to get better. And I watched him over the course of the year. He would speak. I would give him some feedback. The next day he'd try something else. And little by little, he got to be an excellent speaker. And so I think about him a lot because truly, this is a learned thing. Some people show up in the moment with slightly more gifts or self-confidence, but you can build into that. You can truly get better if you focus on it and you have a good guide.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I know that. Sorry.
That's okay.
So I know that as business owners, we always have that one topic that we could speak on forever, give all the tips, the knowledge about, but you talk about the importance of having a story, especially a signature story. Can you talk more about that and why that's important?
Absolutely. Stories are so powerful. They are like the persuasive, magical gift in your back pocket that you can pull out to connect with people. And we all have lots of stories in our life, even if we think our lives are boring and we like little old me over here in Minnesota. I'm just like, who cares about my story or what I saw today or what I experienced today? But really the story is in service of a message, and it is the fastest way for your audience to connect with you. So I mentioned I worked with teenagers. I remember when I first started speaking to them, standing up in front and trying to deliver this beautiful script. I thought it was beautiful. I was like, dang, these lines are powerful, and I'm really giving them like nuggets of wisdom, and they didn't care about the message until I told the story. And I remember like feeling this disengaged. I'm like, I'm losing them. They're chatting with each other, super disengaged. And I made a decision, in split-second decision, to just bypass the next 3 minutes of me talking at them with these beautiful scripts that they didn't care about, and fast forwarded to the story. And as soon as I started telling the story, their little heads popped up. They stopped talking to their neighbor, pulled in and engaged. And then after I had their engagement, after they got a sense that I, through the story, understood what they were going through, that they were emotively opened up to it, then I could deliver some of those key messages and one-liners, and then the message could stick. So it was this big aha moment of not just how stories are powerful, they are the most important persuasive engagement tool that we have. And if we use it in the right way, it makes our messages more impactful. And without it, we're just working, it's an uphill battle. And yeah, Jillian, you're right. As business owners, we have tons of stories that we typically are not really using in order to connect with our audience, in order to pull them, in order to get them to care about our expertise, our ideas, all of the reasons we're like, I have so much to tell you and share with you. I don't care. Why should I care? The story helps them figure out why to care. And we have to have that first.
Yes, you have to have that connection, because anybody could tell them all the tips and tools, but they have to feel that connection with you to actually listen.
Yeah, it's an information world right now. The information's already out there. Your story is what makes it meaningful and what makes it different from somebody else's expertise.
So if we don't think we have a story, how do we dig a little deeper into finding that?
Oh, that's such a good question. It takes some self-reflection. I'm thinking back to the key moments in your business or your life. So I like to say that any strong beliefs that you have about your business or even about your idea, what's underneath that is likely a story. Like my belief that stories are persuasive was based on a moment when I saw that stories were persuasive, and that moment is a story. It's very meta. That was like,
Yes.
that was 7 layers of meta there.
Yes.
But the true same thing is true for all of us. From a broad scale, like what are those key stories that you tell? What are the key beliefs that you have that you really want to pass along to other people? They are likely based on an aha moment or a story from your own life. So you could go one by one and say, okay, I have this strong belief. Why do I have that belief? What was the moment that that belief was born? Those are really powerful stories for our business, the kind of the origin stories. So your idea originated somewhere. There's a story there, right? So those are origin stories that you can tap into. I also love what I call the everyday stories. So those stories are the things that move you in the everyday. If you are moved emotively about something, pay attention. Why? What moved you about that? There is a framework that I use with my speakers, and it's moment, meaning, and move. So when you are out in the world and something moves you, you notice something, you see an exchange at the grocery store, or you see a TikTok that just like lights you up for some reason. That is a moment. You could share that moment. That's the first M. The second M, though, is the really important part, and that is the meaning. You can take that moment, and now your job as the speaker, and I'll use that term really loosely here because whatever way you are speaking, your job is to translate that moment for your audience. So one of the things that tends to hold people back from telling stories is they're like, who cares about me? Well, it's not really about you. It's about your audience and what they could get from this moment. So you create the meaning for your audience. And then the third M is move. So that is what do you want them to do with this moment and meaning that you have just offered up to them? So moment, meaning, and move. And if you use that framework, it's actually a really powerful way to make sure that you're leveraging the persuasive power of stories, and it helps you like with the structure of like, how do I show up and talk to my audience all the time? So there's a little nugget for you. MM.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to remember that. Yes. Yeah, because we all have things that happen to us all day long. You can always find meaning in something to help your audience. I love that.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, the everyday stories are around us all the time and super powerful and a little easier to access than sometimes the origin stories can feel really big. I don't know what the story is in my business. Like, well, what did you notice today? There's a story there.
Yes. Oh, that's such great advice. And thank you so much for being on today. Like, I think you're making us all feel a little more comfortable with finally using our voice and getting it out there so we can impact more people. So can you let the listeners know how they can connect with you and work with you?
Absolutely. You can find me on all of the interwebs. I'm most active on Instagram. So you can find me there at SallyZ_BeMove. And if you want to dive a little more deeply into that simple story framework, the M, you can grab that at bemoved.com/SSF for simple story framework.
I will make sure all of that is in the show notes.
Yay.
Thank you so much again and enjoy your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jillian. This is really fun.